Hello ladies and gentlemen, what I have here is a PSION Organiser Series 2, or the PSION Organiser II if you like to call it that. It's something I genuinely believe to be a groundbreaking computer, a sort of computer that changed a lot of things and ushered in a new type of computing. It was released in 1986 and was produced into the early 90s. Some people say it stopped in 92. I have a sneaking suspicion production went on a bit longer, because there was a PSION Series 3 came out in 92, and then the PSION Series 5. But this video is more of an ode to the PSION Organiser II. Have a look at it, a bit of a demo, because I've actually got one in a box here, which I'm going to unbox and show you. And to talk about PSION in general, a company that no longer exists, but which I have a great affection for, and they're incredibly innovative for their time. So let's just, I suppose, start opening this up and I'll start talking. PSION was founded in 1981. It was standard for Potter's Scientific Instruments, or nothing, so the legend goes. So it's founded by a guy called, Clive Potter? I was going to say Dennis Potter, but that's a playwright. So what we have here is a really nice manual, really in depth. You don't get manuals like that nowadays. And it's actually surprisingly complex for what is a very simple organiser in terms of what it does. Little brochure here for all the accessories. Autumn 88, so that probably dates this to 87 or early 88. And you can see there was like quite a lot of nice little accessories available for this. There was a printer, barcode scanner, swipe card reader, and the developer toolkit for the PC, so you could actually write software for this, but I'll come on to that later. And a warranty card, a guarantee card. I wonder what would happen if I sent that off. Probably nothing. So open it up, and here we have it, the model, the organiser itself. As you can see, I got quite a good quality one here. It's been hardly used, and it's in very good nick actually. One of the things I like to say about PSION is they were really good at industrial design. I'd even go as far as saying they were a bit like get down. They were a bit like the British Apple almost, in terms of the thought and effort they put into designing their hardware. If you look at it, it's got this sort of like slightly curved back, so it feels good in your hand. It opens up and the buttons they're solid. They've got a nice click to them. This cover comes off, and it's just an empty hollow plastic cover, but it's solid, it's firm, it's good. And even things like as simple as the battery compartment. It takes a 9-volt battery, and most things would use the two little clip-on terminals that pop out in the wire, but those are unreliable. So what PSION did is they actually have this little sort of spring-loaded plastic thing here, which you can then drop your battery into, just like that. Durable, long-lasting. And it works. It's the sort of thing you could imagine Apple doing. So in terms of making their products easy to use and last. And even this expansion port here, if you look carefully, you can see it's flush. But as you open it, it drops in. It drops down and in. That is something that they didn't have to do, but they did it. They made it quality just to make it a more quality device. And on the side here with these are actually dummies, but there are expansion packs for these devices, which I'll also come on to in a bit. And also there's this nice metal surround. I'll switch it on and see, copyright 1986. So there we go. So there's a knob here on the side for adjusting the contrast. So what you have is find, save, diary, calc, programming, erase, time, info, alarm, copy, reset, off. Now the organiser functions on this are actually quite simple. Now there were around this time there were like the digital diaries were coming onto the market, like the likes of Casio and a Sharp and a few other companies were making these little sort of personal organiser devices. They weren't programmable, they didn't run software, but they did store your telephone numbers, they did take memos, they could tell you the time all over the world. So they're basically glorified calculators. This, on the other hand, is a proper computer. It isn't an actual real computer, which you can program and write your own software for. It's certainly not the first pocketable computer or portable computer. I believe the Sharp PC211 is the first truly portable, pocketable computer. But that didn't have many expansion options, didn't have many memory storage options. And if anything, it was just a calculator with programming features added on. And it was certainly something you couldn't hold in your hand like this. It was actually, it's long. It was, the design wasn't conducive to being carried around. And there was also before this, there was the Epson HX20, which is an A4 sized computer. It was portable, alright, but it certainly wasn't something you could slip in your pocket. No, the PSION Organiser is the first genuinely handheld pocket computer. There was actually a PSION Series 1, which I would love to get my hands on, but that was quite limited compared to the Series 2. For starters, it didn't have the expansion port, which was crucial to the success of this device, and it only had between 2 and 8 kilobytes of memory, and the keyboard wasn't as good, and it only had a one-line display. The PSION Series 2, on the other hand, went through various models. This is the XP model here. The original model was actually the CM, which, as you can see, this one here has been bashed around a bit, but it's working. There was also later models called the LA, the LZ, and the LP. The LZ and the LP actually had a 4-line display and more memory. Went up to 64 kilobytes of internal RAM, which that was all expandable using these packs. So let's, I'll just sort of show you a quick demo of the software and how it worked. To save, there was a saving telephone numbers and the like was quite simplistic. You go into save, and there's no categorization of data. It's literally just flat, plain text. So if I was to say, I don't know, dive, delete. Yes, one other curious thing is it does not have a Qwerty keyboard, which is possibly one of the biggest mistakes I think they made. So do that and then exe, and that saves it. If I want to save something else, I'll say save and go Peter. It's really weird using a non-Qwerty keyboard. Space. Shift 1, 2, and if I want to find it, I just go find, and I could say I'm looking for Dave, so D-A, enter, and there we go, Dave. And if there's more than one match, you would just use the arrow keys to scroll for it. So really quite simple, but it worked, and it suited the small display. To go back to the main menu, you press OK. Diary, very simple again. You just edit, and you'd type in your some message, alarm, yes, minutes 15 beforehand, and there you go. And if you wanted to add a new one, I'm trying to actually, okay, so you move left and right to go for the dates and times, and ups and down. So left and right takes you through the actual days, and up and down takes you through the times. And then whatever one you want to choose, you press EXE. There is a slight problem with this for something that was made in the 1980s. It doesn't actually support the year 2000. Now apparently later models did, the LZ and the LP, but this particular model didn't. There is actually a bit of software you can run to change it, but that someone developed very nicely, but I haven't actually tried it out yet. So to change the date and time, you press mode. Let's go to the year and try and change the year. You keep going up. You see, it goes from 1999 to 1900. So to use it in this day and age would be quite a challenge, but you know, at the time it wasn't an issue. So I'll go back to the main menu. Calc is simple enough. It's just a simple calculator. And make sure the light doesn't irritate. So the 2 plus 9 equals, or 2 times 9 equals 18. Oh, there you go. See if I can just change the contrast to make it more visible. Prog. Now this was actually a fully usable programming language called OPL, Organizer Programming Language, and you can actually write the programs here, but that's a bit of a challenge. Instead, what you would use is the PC-based software, which is DOS based debugger, integrated development environment, and came with an emulator for this, and you'd write your software on that. Now, my first time coming into contact with a PSION Series 2 was in 1992. I just left school and I went to work for a small software development house in Northern Ireland. And they had the license to resell a piece of software used by a couple of the library boards in Northern Ireland for managing libraries, library book loans. And they'd also got the source code for these devices to use for mobile libraries. So what they would actually do in the mobile libraries that went around the rural parts of Northern Ireland, and there was about 30 or 40 of these over Northern Ireland, they would write the software for this. They'd have a data pack, 256 kilobyte data pack, with the list of books that were in the mobile library, typically about 1,000 to 1,500 books, and that was 256 kilobytes was actually enough to store that much data. And there was a barcode scanner attached to this, so they'd scan the membership card of the library member, scan the barcode in the book, and it would be stored in RAM. And then when they got home, when they got back to base, they would unplug the barcode scanner from here, plug in a comms link cable, and that would communicate with a piece of custom written software on the PC, and that would then be updated into the library software. And this is where the PSION Series 2 excelled. A lot of people did buy them as organisers, but I think what were the real game changer for the PSION Series 2 is in how it changed business software, business computing. So for example, there was two versions of the Series 2. There was the consumer versions, which were CM, XP, LA and so on. But for every consumer version, there was an equivalent business version, and that was the POS versions. I don't know why, but they're called that, but that's what they were. And they were identical, except they didn't come with the organizer software. Instead, they looked for a piece of software on these RAM packs that had a function called boot, and it would execute that function. And if you didn't have that function on the software, the unit wouldn't start up at all. So you basically wrote your own software and put it onto the data packs, and you could pretty much do what you wanted. And the language is actually pretty decent. It's basic-like, but it gives you access to the memory addresses directly, which is unusual for basic software. It was also interpreted, the bytecode, so it wasn't interpreted at runtime, it was actually pre-compiled, much like Java or .NET code is. So it was actually quite a powerful piece of software for its day. No, there were portable computers around before then, such as the Osborne and the like, but this was the first sort of handheld computer that was really good for doing repetitive, simple tasks in business. And the number of places it was used is quite phenomenal for its time. Famously, Marks and Spencer's used it for pricing. So if you wanted to check the price of something out on the floor, they could go out with this and type in the product code, and it would be stored inside the device, and they could tell you what the price of an item was. But they also used it for processing their internal charge card payments. So if you went in with a Marks and Spencer's charge card, and remember this is in the 80s and the days before online EPOS systems, they had a magnetic card reader, swipe card reader attached to the device, and it would do some validation, print out a receipt that you signed, and then they'd be taken back to the back office at the end of the day, and all the charges would be uploaded into the main computer. The British government, Department of Work and Pensions or whatever it was in the 80s, also used it for calculating benefits of people at home. So that if you were disabled, they would come around to your house back at a time when they didn't actually try to kill disabled people by telling them that they were well when they weren't and fit for work. They could actually come around your house and calculate what your benefit payment was. There was also a few other examples which I know off the top of my head. Warehouse picking. I guess nowadays just about every sizable warehouse has a warehouse picking computer system, and that's basically a handheld computer. So you have your warehouse operatives, they go in, they pick up their handheld computer, wand, call it what you will. It'll give them details of how many orders they have to pick that day or in the next hour or so. It'll say go to row 10, shelf 5 and pick this item and put it into box 1. PSIONs were used for that, and probably the first devices to do that. That really didn't exist before the PSION Series 2. Also, a lot of dentists and medical professionals used them for capturing data. If you're a dentist and you're going through someone's teeth, bits of software are written for this to allow them to press buttons and log the details of their patient, which made it a lot simpler than just writing it all down or calling it out. And it actually is a really surprisingly versatile device, and it is a full computer. And like I say, coming back to the design of it, it's durable. This thing is tough. and another thing I have to point out is the industrial design and the cleverness of PSION is such that even their logo, which I've always been a fan of, it looks simple enough, but when you realise these little symbols above the words, the letters, are actually the letter but in a slightly different way. So this is like the P but split in two, and the S is split in two, and the I is made to look like an equals. Very clever little logo, and it's that sort of like attention to detail that I just happen to love about PSION in its glory days. This thing will take a beating. Okay, it didn't have a very fast processor. This is a Hitachi HD 6303X, which runs at 0.9 megahertz, so slow. But for what people were using this for, it was perfectly fine, to be honest with you. It did the job. And the amount of accessories that were available were impressive for its time. And I suspect this device probably did better in the industrial computing sector than in the consumer sector, because bear in mind, this is the late 80s when filofaxes were the in thing for the yuppies around town who wanted to capture data. And personally, even me, someone who owns a smartphone, and you can see how this influenced the design of smartphones and the likes today, I still like writing stuff down on paper. It's quicker and easier sometimes. But for environments where you want to do lots of repetitive, simple tasks, this was the trailblazer. This was the first. This is the computer. This is the device that created that industry. And one of the things I'd like to show you is the data packs. These are dummies, unfortunately. I am trying to source real ones. But there were 3 variants. There was EEPROM, Erasable Programmable Read-Only Memory, and they came in sizes from 16 to 256 kilobytes. And they were curious in that you could write to them, but you couldn't delete them. The only way to actually delete them was to shine ultraviolet light on a little sensor inside them for half an hour. PSION actually made a device to automate that process. It was just a device you plugged the data pack into. So it was good for like storing data, lookup data. For example, in our library application, we actually used them for storing the books that are in the mobile library, and the actual logging of the day's lending data was actually held in the RAM of the device itself. So if we lost the battery, we would have lost the all that data. But it's pretty reliable. There was also the RAM packs. Now, RAM packs were basically just literally RAM chips. They were an memory expansion almost. They actually came with a built-in button cell battery, so if you removed them, it actually held the data for a bit of time, and it was actually quite a few months, if I remember rightly, if the battery was fresh. And then there was the third type, which was EEPROM, Electronic Erasable Programmable Memory. I can't remember now actually, but they were very similar to the original data packs. But they, unlike the original data packs, which used a lot of battery power, these didn't. So they were write only. Once you wrote data, you couldn't take it away unless you erased the whole thing. But you didn't need the ultraviolet trick or the eraser. You could just actually call a function on the device, which would erase them for you. But then you're erasing the entire data pack. You weren't, erasing anything selectively. So they had a couple of choices, and they all went up to 256 kilobytes. For our library system, we actually used a combination of a data pack which held the original data pack, which held the stock of the library, and that was updated by the comlink cable whenever the stock of that mobile library was updated. We had a secondary RAM pack which held the actual lending data for the day. I just said it was actually held in memory, but it wasn't. Just remembered there now. So yeah, so there you go. That's the PSION Series 2, and this was replaced with the Series 3, which was a clamshell device. Also great design, but it was obviously aimed definitely more to more consumer focused than even this. And that ultimately was replaced with the PSION Series 5 and the Series 5 MX, which I also owned. Series 5 MX, the Series 5 and 5 MX were amazing PDAs. Great keyboards. I mean, really great, really great keyboards. And amazing industrial design. No Series 4, you may have noticed. Because Apparently PSION had a thing about avoiding even numbers because they figured it would harm their sales in the Far East, where people are superstitious over that sort of stuff, apparently. There was also a Series 7, and that was actually based on the Netbook, which was a business laptop type computer. It wasn't a laptop, it was sort of a half laptop, which had a colour screen. It wasn't quite as big as a laptop, but it wasn't as small as one of these PDAs. And again, great industrial design, but what PSION was very good at was using low-end processors, not low-end processors, but simpler processors, ARM processors and the like, writing very clever software which could take advantage of reduced processing power, but then also save on battery life. Like, one of the things that's made PSION stand out to me over its PDA line was just how good it was at preserving battery life. These things would run for months on a 9-volt battery. The Series 3 and 5 would run for months, well, a month or two on 2 AA batteries. And the operating system that they developed for the Series 3 and it was still in use in some of their other industrial computers. And the Series 5 operating system, Epoch, actually ended up becoming the basis of Symbian. Remember that? The Nokia Series 60 was based on. So what caused their demise? Well, PSION clearly seen that the business market is where the money was, the industrial market. Around the time the Series 3 came out, they also started developing a device called the Workabout, which is, I would argue, the Series 3 is not the spiritual successor of the Series 2. The Workabout is. And that is a pure industrial computer. It's used in warehouses, it's used by delivery services to scan items to confirm they've been delivered, and used in hospitals. It used the same operating system as the Series 3, which I believe was called SIBO, 16-bit operating system. And I can see why PSION would go for that sort of a system, that sort of a market, because even though you might be paying more for the individual device, you might pay $1,000, euros, pounds for the Workabout, but you'd also be buying a support contract. So there'd be long-term revenue gains from supporting the device. And like I say, they kept making their consumer PDAs, the Series 3, the Series 5 and the Series 7, but in 2000 they decided to move away from that whole consumer line, stick to the industrial computers. They merged with a Canadian company called Technologics, who made similar industrial computers, and they carried on until 2013, and then they were bought out by Motorola. And there was also this rather dodgy logo they introduced in 2010, which is quite possibly the naffest logo I have ever seen. So I don't know why they did that, because the original PSION logo to me is a genius logo. It's just perfect. But there you go. Yeah, that's a brief history and ode to PSION, a company that I have had that I loved in its day, which made good computers at a reasonable price. These went from £79 to £179, depending on how the model and the memory. And it's a pity. And I'll tell you the reason why I'm making this video and what got me into them again is, I actually seen a Bureau de Change in Dublin about 2 or 3 years ago. Actually had one of these, and he was using it for Bureau de Change software. I'm assuming it was using one of the later versions, which were year 2000 compatible. But yes, you could actually fit these into a printer and run Bureau de Change software. So I'm assuming that way it worked. Is that the morning they would type in their exchange rate, and as people came in, they would just simply type in how much is being converted from which currency to what, and the receipt would be printed, and they would tell them how much it was being used. And I was surprised to see one of these still in use as recently as 3 years ago. I don't know if it's still going. I don't know where it is now, because the actual shop is closed. If you're ever in Dublin, if you know Dublin, it was that crazy religious shop on O'Connell Street with a Bureau de Change in the back. So they actually had one of these in use until fairly recently. So there you go. That's my ode to PSION and the Series 2 Organiser and its successors. Take care. Bye bye.
We both have a diary, but mine reminds me of appointments. We both have an address book, but mine will find who I want for me. We both have a calculator, but I also have a cross-reference filing system, 8 alarm clocks, and a powerful computer to handle my business affairs. He has problems. I have a PSION Organiser.
Life simplified from under £100. The PSION Organiser II.